Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to Common Censored. I am Lee Camp, joined by Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello.
And this is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes, like today, other stuff.
Woohoo!
Whee!
Yay for other stuff. Thank you guys for joining us. This is going to be a chaotic week for us because we are moving locations and it is a bitch and there's a lot to deal with.
Does anyone else, like whenever they move, have a tremendous urge to just go full Fight Club and burn everything to the ground?
Like you're referring to the explosion at the beginning of Fight Club.
I am.
Yeah.
I'm also talking about how you end up either having sex with Helena Bonham Carter or Brad Pitt, which is a nice way to round that off.
Hold on. That happens in most moves?
I'm saying if it did, I'd be much more inclined to light shit on fire.
Because I was like, who is this moving company?
If I knew at the end I could have sex with either or both, I would light some shit on fire. I'm tempted to light some shit on fire anyway, but...
There's so many amazing...
talk about a happy ending.
This is a definite tangent. There's so many amazing things in that movie, but one of them is I think in the actual released, like the theatrical release version, because the FCC had something to say about it, she said, she said, I haven't fucked like that since grade school.
Oh, right.
and after they fuck. And in the unreleased version, which they decided was too harsh, was, I want to have your abortion.
Okay, so wait. That's even darker because that means that it's more okay to make it sound like a 10-year-old was having sex than to make it sound like a woman has an abortion.
Well, she says I haven't fucked like that since grade school. She didn't say her age in grade school, but also
isn't grade school like up till? Well, that's a good question. When is grade school? I thought it was like elementary school.
Oh no, grade school in the U.S. means at least through high school.
Oh, okay, like your grade.
Your grades.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I thought it was like, never mind. Then that's...
I think so, unless I somehow have missed that all through my life. But
probably not.
but the other thing is that could imply she was at least fucking someone her own age. Now, it would be problematic if she was like, I haven't fucked like that since grade school. A 35-year-old guy took me out when I was 14. Yeah, that'd be worse.
Yeah, but the punchline then is it's too long, I
feel. Anyway, slight tangent. Yeah, we're going to get into to an interesting topic that we maybe haven't addressed that much, which I think will be cool. I wanted to mention up top. So I'm mentioning that we're in the middle of a move and everything because this will be a slightly shorter episode. On top of that, I'm not doing as many live streams this week because of all the shit that I'm dealing with. But there will be a new Redacted tonight. So there's plenty of content still coming out. However, to quickly address it, and we'll address it more later, the destruction of our Patreon, which keeps this show going. I think many of you probably heard last episode where I said that Patreon basically took those of you who are members, paying for every episode, sometimes $1, sometimes $4, whatever, and they took it from every episode to every month, which means you were paying 4 times a month, now you're paying once a month, decreasing our overall revenue, which is not a tremendous amount of money, by 75%. I mean, Patreon just destroyed something that we technically have built up over 2 years. I mean, it took 2 fucking years to get to that point. So, utterly destroyed. So we are switching. We're not going to delete the Patreon. The Patreon will keep running if you're really insistent that you only will support on Patreon, but you will be charged far less than you used to be. But
and also,
we would...
I just want to throw in here that if you want to stay on Patreon, that's cool, but know that a portion of your money goes to Patreon, whereas this new one that Lee's about to tell you about, a portion of it does not go to the host of the patronage site. So keep that in mind too.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. It is a nonprofit, and unless there's some loophole I'm missing, they give all of the donation to the creators. The only way they fund the site is by, random people donating to their site. So
they have their own, donation page.
Yeah.
As if they were also a person that you could donate to. So folks you could become a patron of their site, but it is, other than that, the only thing that is paid for is like a processing fee, which is like 3% or something.
So if you want to make the switch from our Patreon to the new site, I'm going to say it now. It's a little bit complicated, so you might want to write it down.
I will put it in the show notes as well.
It's Liberapay, LIBERAPAY.com/LeeCamp. And you can also just go to liberapay.com and search for LeeCamp. But it would be so helpful and so amazing if you guys could switch from Patreon to Liberapay. And if you were doing, you can do it. You can choose a custom amount. You can do per week. We hope you will do per week, since that's the number of episodes that come out. But also within the description, if you read lower, ignore the tiers they show you, and we have our own tiers that I put in the description. So you'll see those. You'll see the perks for the tiers. It is definitely a different page than Patreon. So if you were used to interacting with Patreon, this is a little bit different. But that's how we keep the show going. This show, I mean, honestly, this show may stop if people choose not to do this. And we have no advertisers, we have no sponsors, we have no one's funding this podcast except you guys. We spent 2 years building up a small Patreon that allowed this show to continue, and now it's destroyed. So liberapay.com/LeeCamp. And we'll talk a little bit more about it later. But let's jump into the story we want to discuss here. And I thought this is a little bit, deeper conversation, a little bit less.
It's a bit more nerdery.
A little more nerdery, and
if
less.
If you're familiar with Act Out, then we're wandering into that space.
Unless Ted Cruz flew to Cancun. It's a little bit more deep. And it kind of has to do with the loneliness that I think we and so many people are feeling during the pandemic. And what a certain portion of what that says about our society. We obviously can't get into why everybody feels lonely, but there is a strong sense of loneliness, and unfortunately, I think there's a lot of suicides connected to that. We don't know those numbers yet, but I'm sure they're immense. And it kind of is like, what society have we created where we're really, so many people don't feel like we're in this together. So many people feel like, especially during a lockdown, because they can't go and sit at a bar, sit at a coffee shop and meet people, they feel like they don't have anyone with them. And we wanted to get into some of the dynamics of that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, what we discussed before is that in terms of, for men, I get that not everything's, gender roles, obviously, but there are some gender roles that still exist in our society, and so those things have ramifications. So to act like they don't exist is to do it a disservice. For men, a lot of men across America, but I understand in many countries, it's the friendship, because we live in this kind of capitalist world that is so competitive, that is so especially if you're a man, but many women too, it's like most people are not supposed to be close friends. They're basically, everyone around you is some level of competitor, even if they're not in your line of work. You're still comparing your achievements to theirs. You're comparing your how much you make. Some people definitely compare that to each other, even when they're not in your line of work. And so it is this kind of endless competition that has kind of designed our society for, especially men, to not develop close relationships, close friendships, and some women as well. A large percentage of women as well probably don't either. And instead, it's kind of this individualistic, we're all in this for ourselves, so therefore we can't be latched to other people to support us or help us.
I think this is interesting. I mean, there's been studies, obviously, about how different countries have dealt with the coronavirus pandemic based on, just like PPE and lockdowns. But I'm also... this is not something that's been discussed, but like, for instance, I'm thinking about Cuba. And Lee and I were in Cuba in 2017. And one of the things, and this is something that I've
with
noticed.
Code Pink Trip.
Right. And this is something that because as an American, you can't just go to Cuba. So this is something that I noticed in Puerto Rico as well. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to travel around Central and Latin America a lot. But from what I've seen, the community is just really tight knit. Like, we would walk down streets and there would just be people that were, saying hey to each other and, randomly like set up playing a card game in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And this is something that I noticed in New Orleans too. So it does happen in the U.S., but I think for the majority of quote unquote neighborhoods or communities in the U.S., they're far more divided. And, you've got the fences and you've got this is mine and that's yours and but like, I'm also like, with regards to COVID, I feel like communities and neighborhoods and larger cultures that have this feeling of community that's kind of built into it, right? This like check on your neighbor, this we share shit. I feel like they have done better, if not in numbers of, of deaths or, people who have gotten COVID, just in terms of like how they're doing mentally or emotionally or, as a culture. Whereas the US, shit is breaking down on like a personal and of course a systemic level, but it was doing that before. Much more so because there isn't like people didn't have anything to fall back on, and so this is, I think, I feel like this would be an interesting thing to see too, is like how these cultures who have much more of a community feel to them and check on your neighbor type paradigm are doing with COVID compared to individualist societies like our own.
Yeah, I think that's an important fact is that, unfortunately our communities have been largely destroyed. Our lives have been so atomized and separated. I mean, we go home to our seclusion boxes, and we cultural programming, social engineering is so powerful that I think most Americans believe that they chose this atomization. They chose to be secluded. They chose to not have hardly any communication with those around them. But when you're set up in a culture that facilitates that and pushes that and says, be skeptical of everyone else because they're trying to take what you worked for, then you think you're choosing it, but really you're responding to the social engineering.
When you get this bullshit about we're all in this together, right? You've heard a lot of this during COVID. Oh, we're all in this together. But that's just, it's a platitude because there's no feeling of that deep down. And that only makes that chasm between reality and the platitude even greater, because you're feeling alone. You're not feeling like there's a together with anybody, certainly not the system that keeps telling you we're in this together. So that creates this division where you're like, well, am I fucking, like Zoolander? Like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like, what's wrong with me if I'm not feeling this togetherness that I'm supposed to be feeling, that the system keeps telling me that we're together. And of course, another part of that programming is if you fail, it's your fault. So if you're feeling like we're not together, it's not the system's fault. It must be your fault for not understanding the togetherness that is so clearly present here. And so that, again, that just makes that division between reality and what's being told to you even greater, which causes, feelings of great anxiety and stress. And there's no there's no like answer to that, right? Except for the grassroots community organizing that tells people, look, no, you're not crazy. This system doesn't fucking care about you. There's no together. That's just some fucking, like Nike sponsored tagline. But here's the togetherness that we can try to manifest and build literally from the ground up.
I'll speak for the men, but you can you can decide whether the same goes for women or to a lesser degree. But there's such a stigma on requesting help, needing help, admitting that you're lonely, or that you know are depressed, or and I think for men it's very aggressive. Like it's like you failed in society. If you even you know, especially if you don't have enough income, but even there's plenty of men who have plenty of money, but they're still alone or lonely, and you know haven't found that other person to be with, and they're viewed as like a failure rather than like, hey, this society is set up to tear up so many lives, and unfortunately right now you're on the ass end of that, but there are people out there that can help. There are people out there that can you know, help you move past this, and yeah, there's just such an aggressive stigma against, like, especially men seeking help of any kind, saying, you know, things are going pretty well, but you know, I'm lonely, or I need some people to hang out with. Like,
I'm reminded of so many things, but the first thing that popped into my head was The Sopranos, where Tony Soprano, who's like the boss of this crime family, goes to see a psychiatrist, and he has to make sure that nobody else finds out about it, because you couldn't possibly be a mob don and be going to see a psychiatrist at the same time.
Right.
And the whole show is kind of centered on this decision of his to go see a psychiatrist. But I'm also reminded of a mutual friend of ours, who's a black man and an organizer, who was dealing with a lot of trauma, and we were having a conversation once, and he was like, I need to go see a therapist, but I don't even know how to go about doing that, because first of all, as a cis man, and then also as a black man, he said there's an extra layer of that's unacceptable, which is also part of the, you know, the racist patriarchy, which is this idea that black men in particular are these, you know, these stoic beasts that, you know, the beasts of burden, these incredibly strong, ferocious brutes, right? Who are also very dumb, right? Like that's like since slavery, this stereotype.
right.
And yet that's, interestingly enough, like this ties into an episode of Silver Threads that's just come out, with Ashanti Alston, who talks about
Eleanor's other amazing podcast.
who talks about the internalization of oppression and how you start internalizing the ideas and the concepts of your oppressor. And this is something that that our friend was talking about had happened in the black community. Like, oh, we've just internalized that we never need to seek help for our trauma because we're so strong. And this, I mean, that obviously is something that's very pervasive with men in general, but I think that there's also that race lens as well. And I think, interestingly enough, with women, something that I've noticed is while women have typically like a better network of support, I've also noticed that, like, when I, like, particularly in my 20s, there would be women who would say, look, I'm strong enough, it's fine. And it was kind of like, well, you're trying to buck the patriarchy by saying that you're not weak, but then by saying that you're strong enough to not need help, you're actually weaker, because you're taking on then the shitty issues of the patriarchy that they, you know, that men deal with. Like, so to actually evolve past the patriarchy, you don't take on the stereotype of men, which is you're so strong that you never need to deal with your own trauma. You go beyond that and say, no, I do need support for the trauma, and fuck the patriarchy and fuck capitalism, which is the source of so much trauma. That is actually how you go above and beyond it. But I think overwhelmingly women struggle with that less. And of course, this is a generalization, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I think generally that's true. And this is actually something that Harriet Fraud, who I can't remember the name of her podcast, Capitalism Hits Home, I believe. She also shows up on Professor Richard Wolff's show, Economic Update.
That's FRAAD.
Yes.
Not FRAUD.
I know, it's an unfortunate name for a psychiatrist, but she's done some research into mass shootings and found that
She's tried them out. She wasn't a fan, but
that I can't remember if it was all of them or almost all of them. And these are, you know, the mass shootings that are perpetuated by predominantly white men. They had all experienced...
Yeah, sorry, folks. It's not Arab terrorists that are
Right,
pulling
yeah.
off these mass shootings.
She found that it was basically that these men had experienced a loss of either a job or a significant other or both right before the mass shooting. And this really speaks again to the issue of when a man loses something that was very important to him, that he felt legitimized him as a man. You know, you have a woman because you're a man, or you have a job because you're a man, and then you lose one of those things that horribly emasculates you. Well, what do you grab then to certify your manhood? A gun.
Right.
Because America. And so that, I mean, that really speaks to you know, what the patriarchy does to men as well.
Literally almost looks like a phallic symbol ejaculating. So that will help the guy, you know, redeem himself. No, obviously it's horrific. And now most men that are lonely or lose a job or a significant other do not go on to mass shoot. But the small number that do, this is often a common thread. And, you know, America uniquely deals with these mass shootings on the level that we do, unlike most other countries. And something else we heard about was in terms of like loneliness right now, we heard about a phone sex worker who was saying that they were dealing with more and more fantasies of basically like just a regular life. Like, just talk to me like everything's fine.
Yeah, and basically calling sex workers to talk about your emotions, which is, you know, it's like the surprisingly human fetishes under capitalism.
Well, and besides the fact that it's secret because it is, so the guy's like, oh, well, this won't get out, so I can make this secret. But also it's the fact that it's you've already called the person, and therefore you've already kind of admitted or acknowledged to a level of sin. Now, I don't view it as sin, but our society, you know, views sex as like sinful. So you've already acknowledged, okay, well, there's a little bit of sin here. So as long as I'm sinning, as long as I'm doing this quiet, dirty thing, then I can do the other quiet, dirty thing of admit I have feelings.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll just go ahead and layer it. It's a layer cake of sin. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I mean, and it also speaks to like the, you know, the labor of, you know, and I understand that not all sex workers are women, of course, but in this situation, it is, you know, it's men who are calling a woman because they view her as not just a sexual being, but a caring being and the person that can carry their emotional baggage. And this speaks to that, right? It speaks to the emotional labor that that women do, and why, you know, Harriet Fraud pointed out in her research that a man has a connection to friends, to you know, to his emotional self through the woman. And when she leaves, he loses that emotional connection because it's not something that he's set up on his own, right? And this is a common theme that I've heard about and seen in some instances. And you know, this is and I've even seen, you know, there's been some movement on the Twitterverse about this, like women are not what is it, like women are not the like emotional mechanics for men or something like that.
That's a great point.
Like,
yeah.
And the, you know, because there's been like conversations about, oh my gosh, she left him and then he fell apart. And it's like, well, that's not her fault. She wasn't supposed to be the glue that kept him together.
Right.
But that's the shitty situation that so many couples are in, that the man was like, wait, but if you leave, literally, it's not just like a sexual partner. It's like my mother and my best friend and my only friend, because I can't talk about my emotions with my guy friends.
Right.
Like, it's fucking insane.
I mean, luckily, I have an important person in my life that I can speak about my emotions to. It's someone on the enterprise customer service hotline, the rental car company. I call them and I ask for Lisa, and then you know, I pretend that I have some problem with a car every week, but well, once we address that, I can usually get at least 5 more minutes of emotional help out of her. But actually, I randomly heard an ad for this, and just so you know, we rarely mention anything business or corporate or anything related, any company on this show that we're supportive of. So they're not paying us for this commercial that I'm about to give, but I did hear an ad which I thought was a great idea. I'm the son of a psychoanalyst, so I understand some of the world of psychology.
Spent a lot of time on couches as a child.
Well, jumping on them while he yelled, "That's for patients! Get off of that!" But he had no patience, ironically.
Oh.
But no, I heard about this, and it sounds like a great idea for a lot of people who are not going to take the steps to like go find someone in their city that they can go to, like a doctor, and sit down with, and they also might not have enough money for that, and they might not like that that's not really very anonymous because you've got to show up to the waiting room and everything. But there are now online therapists that people can call up and talk to, and apparently some of them are very good. Now, I don't remember the one I heard the ad for on some podcast, but if you just Google online therapist, then you get like try Talkspace.com, you get Talkspace.com, you get BetterHelp.com, and they're apparently the fraction of a cost of in-person care. So if you're looking for someone to talk to, that might be a good place to turn.
I actually tried it once. I can't remember which one I tried. And you can also choose, like, you can filter basically, like if you would feel more comfortable talking to a man or a woman. You can also choose someone who has experience with disabilities or with sexual trauma, things like that. It didn't work for me because I'm like, ironically, as an introvert, I need to be in the room with someone. I'm more of an analog person. But I think for folks who feel comfortable with that digital space, particularly if you want it to be a bit more anonymous, then that's a great option.
You can also choose the avatar of the therapist, so you can have like a Sith Lord give you therapy. And
that'd be kind of cool. I feel like
Princess
we'd have a lot
Leia
to
if you're more
talk
of that.
about.
Jabba the Hutt, a caring Jabba the Hutt is actually wonderful.
But that's also like.
Can you imagine the hugs he gives?
Well, no, he had like little T-Rex arms.
Oh, okay.
So he really wouldn't give.
Not like a
good
thunder,
hugs.
not like a thunder sweater.
No, not like a thunder sweater at all. Oh, and I feel like he probably doesn't shower that often. So,
Well, where do you get a circus hose like that this time of night?
Yeah, no, that would be a Me Too moment for me. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry to interrupt.
Carry on.
Sometimes the jokes have to take
No,
precedence.
I understand. But you're gonna have to roll because I forgot where I was.
Okay. Ironically, I hire the online therapist to talk about how the rental car companies fucked me. So it's kind of
all the way down.
Yeah, it's a catch-22, really. I end up paying for the therapy anyway, but to deal with the rental cars. And Patreon really set me off on a storm recently.
God.
So there was that.
Yeah, you've basically been like one of Lee's therapists for the Patreon issues. So thank you for being there.
Well, what's funny is on the last live stream, I was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't really address this until we've set up the new LiberaPay site. And so at first I was like, well, so maybe we won't say anything about the Patreon. And I was like, no, I gotta get it off my chest. They need to pay. But anyway,
you know what, Lee? It's good that you're in touch with your emotions like that.
Is that what that? Does screaming count as in touch with your emotions?
Absolutely.
So something I wanted to say is, and I'm sorry if this starts to sound like a broken record, but if you get down deep enough into this problem, this system, this society, a lot of this does come down to capitalism, because at the heart of it, capitalism has a major problem. And Richard Wolff wrote a great column on a associated topic, which was capitalism has a democracy problem. Mm-hmm. The tiny ruling elite, even if you wanted to say that's the top 5%, although it's really less than the top 1%, but let's say the top 5%, they can't continue to get what they want even remotely. They couldn't have, $10 million, yet $10 billion, if the average people were both informed and had their votes count. There is only a matter of time, whether it be 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. There's only a matter of time before the people realize they're united against their oppressors, against those who rule the society. It's only a matter of time. And so how do they deal with that? Well, in several different ways. But one of the most important ones is to make sure we don't have much community. Because if we have community, we unite. And we start realizing we're in this together, literally, rather than the bullshit catchphrase. And we start talking about where our harm, our oppression is actually coming from. It's not actually coming from your coworker who you think is fucking bad-mouthing you to the boss. It's coming from the boss's boss. Like, we start to discuss things and work together to change them, and that cannot exist in a true way, in a true and legitimate way in a capitalist society, because it's only a matter of time before the 95% stand up against those 5%. And so they need us separated. They need us to not have much community. Look, I'm not. It's not in my personality to have, even if it existed in the U.S., to live on a commune. But if you notice, they don't even exist in the U.S. That is by design, because these people. I did a video a few years ago on how one got raided in Texas because they were off the grid. Another one got raided in Florida because they accused them of not paying taxes or something. And they put them in prison. They do not want people to be able to come together as a community, because inevitably, without fail, it will result in people uniting.
Right, and this is I think this is something that you can tell by the twisting and the wrecking of history, right? Like, people are told that the Black Panthers were disbanded and destroyed because they were terrorists and they were going to try to take over the government, and they had guns. But really, what was really threatening is that they were organizing their communities. They were telling people about the oppressor. They were feeding kids and teaching them about their own history, about Black history, about the concept of liberation and Black power. That is super fucking dangerous.
That's why
a country that's built on the deep subjugation and oppression of Black people.
That's why the new Fred Hampton movie can go fuck itself.
Right.
It doesn't really discuss how much good the Black Panthers did for a community, or a community here and there in Chicago and everywhere.
Yeah, and this is why it's so threatening when oppressed people come together, which is why you don't hear about, for instance, the Haymarket Affair, or actual Labor Day, which is May Day, which is celebrated around the world except for in the country where it happened, the United States. This is why these stories of people coming together and fighting together against the oppressor, this is why that's not discussed, and why we're not told about it. And so it's I lost my train of thought again. It's all the huffing dust, I think that's it.
I thought you did beautifully. If you just ended on a period instead of a ... I think you were done. It was okay. It was beautiful.
Maybe I'll go back and edit that out, but I probably won't, because I'm too tired.
No, don't edit it out. People like that you're human.
Yeah.
Isn't that's what this episode's about? We are
about
human.
me and run-on sentences?
No. About us being human, and about how much I hate fucking rental car companies.
Wait, I thought it was Patreon.
All of the above! So now I've lost my train of thought. I actually had something there. Wow, oh my god, we've really fucked it up. Oh, I know. So community. So I was, and maybe this can be where we'll start to wrap up, because, like I said, this is going to be a short episode. But we can only do so much, obviously. We can't come to everybody's home who feels a little lonely and hang out with them, although that would be lovely. But we've tried to create a little community around this podcast, a little community around the live streams as well that we often do on the weekends. And in that vein, we have started using the donations on the Super Chats, which is the YouTube, but we're also switching to Rockfin as well. We have been donating all of those proceeds to the past few times to people in need before we'd been donating them to organizations, which is nice. There's important. We only did important organizations, but you never really know who that's helping, who that's going to. You know it's to a good cause, but you can't exactly know. Whereas the last few times we've been donating all the proceeds to people in need who email us, and you can do that, commoncensored@protonmail.com. And to be specific, this is financial need. We don't have the ability to give you a job. We don't have the ability to send someone to your house to talk with you, unfortunately. But we are able to give, $50 to $100 to some people that are really at the, edge of a really rough time, and that $100 could make a difference. And so we've been doing that, and it's really been great. For those of you who have donated, it's the responses, which I'll read some more on the next live stream, but have been so wonderful from people that one person just responded recently, "Thank you for being human."
And can I just say that I love that response, because it really highlights, and maybe this is me going too meta, and the person didn't mean for it to be this big of a deal, but like that just so pinged for me how the system that we live in is so unhuman, in the sense that humans only have survived to this point because of collaboration. And this is, I'm not going to go too far into the nerdery, but this is something that like Kropotkin and Bookchin have talked about a lot.
People love your nerdery. You don't have to apologize.
So basically, like, I love that comment, because it is human to look out for each other. It is human to build community with one another. It is human to like help each other survive and to thrive. And so I think, like, again, like circling back to the beginning when I was talking about how the reality of the situation is that we're not together. We're not in this together. The system doesn't give a flying fuck, and yet the system keeps telling you we're in this together. So the gaping chasm between reality and what you're being fed by the system is so large, and it keeps growing in times like these. And no, you're not fucking insane. The reality is that the place that we build community, the place that we actually find that togetherness that's being, that platitude that's being shoved into everyone's brains, is by building from the grassroots. And so, as Lee said, we're able to help out with some finances at the moment. But if y'all are looking for that connection, I suggest that you check out some mutual aid networks in your areas. A place where you can find some lists of local mutual aid networks. You can check out mutualaiddisasterrelief.org. They've got a bunch of places listed all around the country, and also, if there isn't one around you, then you can start one. Literally, the only thing that a mutual aid network is its neighbors helping neighbors. Like, that's really just all it is. So you don't need like a degree in fucking anything. You just go out and you start helping each other. You do what the system is not meant to do and won't do. So.
And also, if you're a man, just take a shot of whiskey and shut the fuck up, man. Jesus, what's your problem? Just fucking win, okay? Become a winner. Jesus Christ. Dude, shut up.
Oh, no.
No, not at all. Kidding. But yeah, so hopefully we gave you some resources. Honestly, like I said, I come from a psychology family. I think if you don't have the money or the ability to go out and see a therapist, if you need one, check out those online ones. I think that's a good option for a lot of people.
And
also,
your community.
Also, they had said that because it's not bound by country or area, they can find you can find the right kind of person for you. It doesn't have to be in your town or a mile from you. It could be all over the world, which also means they can have like Bangladeshi child labor psychoanalysts, which you could talk to like a 6-year-old who's getting paid 5 cents, and that it's much more affordable. It's very affordable.
Thank you, Lee.
They could send you Nike shoes too. So you get your shoes and your therapy all from the same kid. It's great. Was that too far? But seriously though, and I'll give out those names one more time. Talkspace.com, betterhelp.com. I haven't tried them myself, so I'm not saying they're perfect, but it's an option. And we'll just close out with what I said at the beginning, which is our Patreon. Many of you were members there. We can't thank you enough, but it has been destroyed. You're welcome to leave your membership going on Patreon. We'll still be keep that going, at least for now. But we're really asking everybody to go over to liberapay.com/LeeCamp, liberapay.com/LeeCamp.
And I will put that in the show notes.
Become a weekly donor. You can do as low as $1 a week, and as high as you want, because you can put in a custom amount. And if we can just get it to, like 100 people or something, then I think we can keep this show going. Because Patreon has royally fucked us. And, it could be, I was talking with Graham Elwood about this, it could be by design in that they kind of are fucking over the creators that are more controversial, but I think it's probably just a profit thing for them. They overall make more money if people are monthly donors than if they are per content donors. And so they're pushing everyone to switch to that without people understanding what will happen, and it fucked us, but with other people it will help Patreon make more money. So I think it is just a corporate, it doesn't matter what individual creator gets fucked, it's just what will get more money into Patreon's coffers. And they were always taking a large percentage to begin with, so this is really maybe a blessing in disguise. If several of you will go over to liberapay.com/LeeCamp, this could be a blessing in disguise for the show. We'll see. All of that donation goes to us instead of like Patreon, where they take it's a varying percentage, but it's a lot of the money. So thank you so much for being a part of this journey with us and for joining us this week. Sorry for the short episode. We'll be back with a full-length one next week, and you guys rock.
Indeed. Until next time, act out.
Keep fighting.